Welcome to Superhero-POW. I'm your host nerd, Tom Fremgen. This week I wanted to talk about superhero in movies, as everyone is still falling all over themselves to praise the very first one from 2017, Wonder Woman. But that's not really true. There actually have been superhero movies before Wonder Woman. Mind you, why Wonder Woman had to wait for 8 Batman movies, 7 Superman films, and a frickin' movie about steel before getting her first shot is ridiculous. But the first superhero movie actually happened decades ago. And it starred the biggest movie star ever to appear in a superhero movie. Don't believe me? Well then, just how big of a movie star do you think Audrey Mother-Lovin' Hepburn is? Alright, Marlon Brando was in Superman, but he only played Jor-El. Audrey Hepburn played the superhero, Rima the Jungle Woman. Now I'm sure some of you are crying foul, claiming that Rima isn't a superhero. Well then, just what do you consider a superhero is? Is Tarzan a superhero? Is Batman really a superhero? What about the Shadow? It's clearly open to debate, but the one thing Batman and Rima have over the Shadow and Tarzan is both were members of the Super Friends. And if that doesn't make you a superhero, I don't know what will. And just like with superheroes, it's a little messy trying to figure out what is a movie. There were silent Tarzan films and serials featuring Superman and Batman and Captain America, Tiger Woman, and a host of other pulp and comic heroes. And then Superman had a run of theatrical animated shorts. The Shadow had 6 B-grade features from 1937 to 1946. And the pilot for the TV show The Adventures of Superman, starring George Reeves, was released in theaters as Superman and the Mole Men. So which was the first one? Your guess is as good as mine. All I know for sure is that in 1959, Audrey Hepburn starred as Rima in Green Mansions. It all started back in 1904 when William Henry Hudson published his novel Green Mansions, a romance of the tropical forest. Hudson was a British naturalist born in Argentina in 1841. He spent his life writing books, both fiction and nonfiction, about the jungle and the rainforest. In the early 1900s, Lost Worlds became all the rage in fiction, thanks mostly to Edgar Rice Burroughs. He created Tarzan. Hudson joined in with Rima. Hudson hit upon the idea that Rima was part of the lost tribe of light-skinned gods that the South Americans believed in. This is the belief that caused them so much trouble when the Spanish showed up. Right off the bat, I'd say this makes her a little bit more than just a female Tarzan. The title, Green Mansions, comes from a line in the Bible, John 14:2. In my Father's house are many mansions. Hudson takes this to mean forest and jungles are the mansions of God. And as a naturalist, his viewpoint is often that man is screwing up these places. Then in the 1950s, Audrey Hepburn's first husband, Mel Ferrer, a respected actor and occasional director, talked MGM into adapting the book, with him directing, to the tune of $5 million. Of course, having Audrey star probably helped convince them. At the time, she had made Sabrina, but had yet to make Breakfast at Tiffany's. Her co-star was Anthony Perkins, who was just a year away from starring in Psycho. And the villain was played by Henry Silva. It was one of his first villain roles, and he did so well with it, it basically helped typecast him as a villain from then on. The story itself takes place in 1875, where Rima is the protector of a forest, preventing the native Indians from hunting there. She has the ability to speak with animals, manipulate spider webs like cotton, commune with the dead, and just in general is rather unworldly. The locals believe she killed a man, but this story is very doubtful as she is a total pacifist. Into her world comes the narrator, Abel, a Venezuelan's official's son who's on the run from a rebel coup. Hiding out with the natives, he eventually runs into Rima and the two fall in love. And that's when all the trouble starts. I won't spoil the story in case you want to see for yourself. Though I will mention this ain't no Marvel formula film, despite a climactic final struggle. Yet Rima herself doesn't perform any heroics. I attribute this to the male-dominated time in which she was created, and when the film was made. Like the book, it's mostly a quiet romantic film, with the threat of violence from the villain, though the film has a more traditional villain than the book. Both the film and the book spend a lot of time on who Rima is and where she came from. I should mention the movie tries to give Rima a more concrete origin rather than the open-ended one in the book. It should also be noticed that Hudson is recycling a concept here, as writers often do. His 1887 novel, A Crystal Age, has the same elements of an explorer meeting and falling in love with an extraordinary girl. Now let's fast forward to 1974 and finish up establishing Rima as a superhero. So in the 1970s, adventure licensed properties were doing well for DC and Marvel Comics. Marvel was into its third year of Conan the Barbarian, and DC was into its second with Tarzan. Looking for more properties, DC picked up The Shadow and then Rima for a 7-issue run. Though DC made some changes to her, making her more mature, literally, and changing her black hair to white. How she went from the 1870s to the 1970s isn't explained, although the ending of the film could be spun off into a million different directions. And of course, DC turned Rima into a full-on action hero. A few years later, in 1977, Hanna-Barbera was relaunching the Super Friends with the all-new Super Friends Hour. They expanded the team to include The Flash, Green Lantern, The Atom, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, the Wonder Twins, Apache Chief, Black Vulcan, Samurai, and Rima. If you were wondering, El Dorado was added a few years later. They changed Rima a bit more by darkening her skin, kind of missing the whole point of her being from a lost white tribe. So, for a whopping 3 shorts, Fire, River of Doom, and Return of Atlantis, Rima ran alongside Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman, making her a full-on superhero, and therefore retroactively making Green Mansions the first superhero in movie. So the next time you're sitting around bitching about the lack of superhero in movies, just remember that the first one came out in 1959, it starred Audrey Hepburn, and Superman was the only superhero to beat her to the box office. That is frickin' cool. Now, thanks for watching, and I'd love to see your thoughts below.